who is Klint Kubiak and why is he the new offensive coordinator here?
I was really excited for Klint to get this job, and I think it's a good marriage between him and Mike Macdonald. I mean, not just because they're similar in age and all that, but I think that Klint is going to bring a really calm, poised presence to the offensive side of the ball. He's got a great background in what he's done over his entire career. You just look at it from his experiences with his dad and the successes that he's learned from his dad. And also you look at it in terms of the road and the journey that he's been on since I've known him here with the Denver Broncos. Here in 2022, I think there's a lot of things that you learn from that year, and not a lot of them are good, but you learn from the bad and you harden your philosophies. You harden into, what I know to be true. So then he goes off with the 49ers. He gets to work with Kyle Shanahan again, get to have that experience, kind of reformulate his philosophies, make sure that he believes in what he believes, and then gets that opportunity with the New Orleans Saints. And I think Klint did a really good job with the New Orleans Saints, just a really tough situation. I mean, if you remember, they exploded out to start the year, and then the wheels fell off really fast in regards to injuries, regards to drama, all of that. And I don't think a lot of that had a whole lot to do with Klint, which is why he got these interviews, why Mike Macdonald is so interested in bringing in Klint Kubiak, John Schneider, and that whole crew. And obviously we're impressed with him enough to give him that job. And this is not something that they're looking for as an experimental process like I think the Grubb situation was, hoping for the best. I think that they know that they're getting a real steady hand who understands the run game and what he wants to do and how he wants to operate it and how he wants to expand outside of that run game from a protection standpoint, from a play action standpoint. And that element was really lacking within the Seahawks offense last season.
What would you say you learned the most being shoulder to shoulder with him in that difficult year where Nathaniel Hackett doesn't last the year? I think he called about 8 games or so, 7 games, and then they turn it over to an older gentleman there as well. But in those weeks and in that season that you were around him an awful lot, what were a couple of the biggest takeaways that you learned from him?
There was so much chaos in that building. There can be a whole book written about that particular season. He was so steady-handed. And that was something that I really was impressed by him. It would be so easy to get caught up in the wave of the emotions and the craziness that were going on in that building at that time. And Klint was very focused. He wasn't worried about the problems that existed. He was more focused on solving those problems. And from my perspective, I think Klint did a really good job in handling that he could in the role that he could. And it was a very limited role with the dynamics that were within that building. But it showed me a lot about his football character. And when you have a lot of people that are more focused and worried about their job after like game 2 or 3, he was focused on the mission. And that was something that I was really impressed with him about. And, just gotten a chance to get to know him and be close with him over that time. I think that you're getting a guy that really knows who he is and understands what it takes, not just from an X's and O's calling it Salk, but an install. Where do I want to start? Where are we going to start and where are we going to build off of? And that's what the great coordinators do in this league, is they have a clear plan and vision as to how they want to build this thing out from day 1 to day 15. And I think that that's something that Klint is going to be valuable in this role and something I think was missing a little bit last year.
Well, and that'll probably be important here too, talking to Jake Heaps, because Mike Macdonald's made it pretty clear the offense coordinator's in charge of the offense. I mean, he's, in addition to the head coach, he's got to be the defensive coordinator, and he's spending more of his time working on that. He needs somebody who can come in day 1 and know how he wants to do it and know how he wants to install and know, the order of operations of how all of that goes. The other thing that's come up, and Brian Walters talked a lot about this when he was in earlier in the week, is just, okay, look, schemes are schemes, and they're all out there. Everyone's works when it's done correctly. and there's only so many plays you can run. The issue and the question is, how good are you at sequencing those plays and calling them in a game? What kind of a play caller is Klint Kubiak?
It's a great point by Brian, and it's so important, especially at the NFL level, how you layer everything. And that's kind of what I was getting to in regards to the install process for Klint Kubiak. Is he comes from the system of the Shanahan tree, Gary Kubiak being one of the originals of that. And so what you're going to get is everything is going to mesh off of that zone run scheme, from your play action game, from the looks that you're going to get in your passing game. You're going to marry all of those things together. And, you hear Sean McVay talk about it, right? The illusion of complexity. I think that that's an element that you get with Klint Kubiak, is that you're going to have this illusion of complexity, but really you're running the same stuff. You're running the same outside zone schemes, just doing it with different people. You're able to play action off of that because you're presenting the same exact run action to the defense. And so you're going to get a complete look. And I think when you compare it to last year, this is no knock on Ryan Grubb, who I really, really enjoy. Like, I love studying his offense and the unique things that he did. But at the same time, I think there was a lot of feeling it out, trying to do new things that didn't really mesh together. And you could see that it was pieced together game plan by game plan. Whereas Klint, you're going to have a base, and you're going to work off that base and just try to dress it up and make it look pretty, make it look sexy. And you know who you're trying to get the ball to, right? And that is a very clear objective and a clear mission. And it's going to start with K9. And then it's going to evolve to DK and JSN and the rest of the crew that they have. But I really think that you're looking at, those three guys being the centerpiece of, okay, in Klint Kubiak's mind, I got to get these guys the ball. How do I do that? And I leave Tyler Lockett out there just because it's a big unknown. We have no idea what's going to happen with him. But obviously he would be in the mix if he was there during the season as well.
So great to hear the voice of the great Jake Heaps joining us this morning. It has been way too long.
And by the way, a lot of text. Guys, please tell Jake we miss him. There's a couple, asking Russ questions that we don't necessarily need to dig into. But a lot of folks just say, hey, we miss you, and it's great to hear your voice. And I'm not surprised that Jake's one of our favorites, and I know he's a favorite of a lot of folks around here.
So how does he, how is a QB whisperer? How does Geno Smith fit in with Klint Kubiak's system?
If you remember back to the year previous with that year with Pete, I believe that what they did is they were more play action oriented. And if you're going to struggle up front with the offensive line in particular, and this is what they did for years with Russ, they continued to do that with Geno, is they allowed the opportunity to have these quarterbacks have space. How can we create as much space in the pocket as possible? And a great way to do that is to avoid as much drop back pass as possible and to get into your play action game. And so that gets you deeper into the pocket, that gets you away from the defensive line, and it also allows you to create run lanes. And so what Geno, I think, does exceptionally well is being able to take off in those run lanes and becomes a legitimate threat with his legs when he has nothing downfield but has open space to run. So I think what you're going to see with Klint Kubiak is you're going to get more into that play action pass game. You're going to protect Geno Smith a little bit better. And that is going to allow him to be more accurate, to make better decisions, to not be under duress as much, Salk, which is something that happened a ton last year, that you saw the warts come out in Geno Smith's game in regards to the interceptions. I believe that Geno Smith is operating at a really high level, and if you give him the space to operate, I believe that it's all about protection in this league. How do you best protect your quarterback? And if you could protect Geno Smith, he's going to be able to get it done, guys. He's going to be able to get it done at a high level with the weapons that he has, and that's really the second order of business for Klint Kubiak outside of getting that dang run game going.
Well, and we'll see what all of the personnel looks like before then. There's a new just a new wrinkle in all of this, right? With Pete Carroll all of a sudden in Vegas as the next head coach.
Right.
And he's got a couple of quarterback relationships out there. As Brock mentioned earlier, Pete doesn't have 10 years to build this thing up in Vegas. He's got a 3-year deal. He's already, at an age where even though he looks like he's, younger than us, he is actually now into his mid-70s. Does he go back and try to reconnect with one of the quarterbacks that he had in Seattle?
To think about, I got to see Pete in June at the Elite 11, and you talk about the guy's energy and the guy's love for ball. I mean, he's out there with me. We're watching these high school quarterbacks, and he is just so enthused to be evaluating these guys and talking about them and everything else. And I think that year off for him was great. I think he really enjoyed it. I think he wished it never happened, right? But I think it was really good for him to get that perspective and to have these opportunities to reevaluate everything. And part of that is knowing and coming in with a plan of what you're going to do at quarterback, Salk. And I don't believe that Pete is going to walk into the situation to say, we'll figure this thing out. We'll evaluate the market. We'll look at what presents itself to us. I think Pete has a very strong idea as to what he would ideally like to do and then pivot from there. I don't know what that is, but I know that he's going to have great conviction about what he wants to do at that position. And I know he addresses the defense and the competition and the whole philosophy, obviously. But you got to be able to have a quarterback that operates your system the way that you want to. And obviously, if you're in Seattle, I would be concerned about the possibility of Pete lurking in the shadows, being on the hunt, trying to maybe pry Geno Smith away if John Schneider and Coach Macdonald are looking elsewhere at that position.
Well, yeah, and that's certainly a direction that I could see Pete saying, look, this guy is at the right time. We have maybe the same amount of time left, and he's a great bridge, and he's going to be able to come in and win right now, so that's a possibility. I don't want to put you into a position of being spokesman for Russell Wilson or anything like that, but obviously you do have a relationship there. Do you know whether he and Pete have connected at all over the course of the last year? I mean, it seems sort of messy when divorced, but there were some reports last week that maybe they had spoken a couple of times since Russ had left Denver and Pete had been out of the league. Has there been any thawing or warming of that relationship that you know of?
Yeah, when I saw him in June, again, the conversation was very warm in regards to Russ, and those guys have, I think, been in touch and have kept up with each other. To what degree, I have no idea. But I do know that Pete is one of the best in terms of relationships. I mean, you guys have seen it over the years. This is a very ego-driven business, and I think Pete has a different perspective as he looks at his players almost kind of like they're his own family, like they're his own kids in some aspects, that he plays this grandfatherly role and looks at these guys and says, all right, they're going to be their own people. They're going to make mistakes, or they're going to make decisions that I may disagree with. But at the end of the day, we're going to be able to fall back on the good times that we've had and be able to build that relationship back up when that time is right. And Pete has done that with everybody that I have seen, everybody, from Sherm to Marshawn to, you go down the list. I think Pete has a really unique ability to get past all of that and to kind of see the bigger picture. So I'm not trying to answer this in a roundabout way. I just don't want to speculate on something I don't know. But, I do know that they have patched things up and that they're more than cordial.
So here's two things I do know. Jake has worked out with Titus a little bit, and every time Titus gets in the car, he's like, man, that guy can still throw it. I mean, Jake can spin it. That's number one. Number two, everybody's talking about bringing the band back together. Pete Carroll, Darrell Bevel, maybe Tom Cable.
Right.
2016. Do you know who was on the roster in 2016 with Darrell Bevel? I mean, am I putting two and two together here? Like Jake,
Nope.
Jake, we got a chance. Huh?
I don't know if you can see the video, but I'm greasing the wheel and it's a little squeaky, but hey.
Jake, it is seriously great to hear your voice and just good to catch up with you. You are very much missed here in Seattle on both a personal and a professional level. And it's good to catch up, and we all continue to wish you the best of luck.
Man, it was such a blast, and we got to do this more often. I miss you guys.
We miss you too. We'll make it happen. There you go. There's Jake Heaps, a longtime friend, former host on the station, former